Well, tomorrow the transfer portal opens, and boy, I really hope Austin Novosad sticks around. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you have not already, you should like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. So we'll talk a little transfer portal. We'll talk a little 2024 pop candidates from the 2023 recruiting class. And then we got a little potpourri to end the show. Just a little bit of everything. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Great show coming up. Thanks for being here. So let's get into it, shall we? I think Austin Novosad is capable of being a starting quarterback in college football. Does that guarantee he ever starts a game for the Ducks? No. And I talk about him first because when the portal opens on Tuesday, there's been a lot of talk, most notably on Josh Pate's show, but I've seen some commentary elsewhere in which the expected list of transfers in this spring 2024 transfer portal window is expected to be really, really high. There are expected to be names in there that are going to surprise every team, and you're going to have starters who are, going, or expected starters who go into the transfer portal. I can't guarantee that happens at Oregon. I can't guarantee it won't happen at Oregon, and I'll talk about guys that could hit the portal who I think would make, a little bit of a splash, or would kind of make Oregon fans turn their heads and go, wait, who's leaving? And again, the two quintessential examples, I think, for Oregon football specifically over the last couple of years have been Keith Brown and Dante Dowdell. Dowdell definitely caught me by surprise, and Brown did too, because he'd said, he was staying with Oregon, he's committed and all that stuff, and then 2 days later, he's in the transfer portal. As spring football is played out, there are guys who are not going to like their positions on the depth chart, and because the college football calendar is just so ridiculously wild, this is the way it'll go. I hope Austin Novosad isn't one of these guys, because I look at Novosad, who came in as a four-star quarterback in the 2023 class and was number 3 on the depth chart last year. He's probably number 3 on the depth chart this year. And you're probably thinking, Spencer, why do you want to keep a third-string quarterback around so badly? Reason is twofold. Number one, he was never expected to play as a true freshman. That's a redshirt year, so this is actually going to be his redshirt freshman year. So his career could still go on for quite a while. Number two, as you look ahead to 2025, Dillon Gabriel, this is his final year of college eligibility, so he won't be back. Sure, you could bring in another transfer, but that kind of feels like why they brought Dante Moore in to develop this year to start in 2025. But I also want Dante Moore to get pushed constantly for that job. And I think Novosad is someone who can do that. Now, we haven't seen very much of Austin Novosad so far. He's thrown a handful of passes in what he has shown so far last year in the spring game, little in the Fiesta Bowl. I think he's looked fine, solid, capable, certainly can improve. Someone who I think when he goes into what will be more of a quarterback competition next year, will look a lot different physically and be a lot different than what he was when he first got to campus with the Ducks. And you can say that about a lot of players, but I think that's especially going to be true in his case. But the other thing too, and why I would love for him to stick around, is not just because he can push Dante Moore for the starting quarterback job. I don't know if he could win it, because Moore is a really talented guy, but certainly I think he's capable of pushing him for it. It's not as if Novosad is void of talent. He was, committed to Baylor once upon a time, and Oregon got him when Dante Moore flipped to UCLA because Dillingham went to Arizona State, which is something that Dante Moore confirmed recently. Not surprising, of course. It's not as if Novosad is not a starting capable quarterback. So I'd like for those guys to be able to battle it out. And Dante Moore spoke recently at a media availability about, competition and liking that aspect of it, and you should always want it. And I think that's great. And I think that should apply to this year. I think that should apply to next year. And by the way, I think Novosad is more well-positioned than Luke Moga, who's with the Ducks now, and I hope we get to see a little bit of in the spring game because he's an intriguing physical prospect, very raw at the quarterback position, but intriguing nonetheless. But I think that for Novosad, he's the guy who can best push Dante Moore to be the best version of himself this year, to be the best backup quarterback he can be, where he could step in if needed, if called upon, if something happens to Dylan Gabriel or he has to go out for a play or something like that. You want him to be as prepared as possible. I think that's something that Novosad's capable of doing. But then looking, way down the line, if Dante Moore were to start in 2025 and have a great year, he might go to the NFL. And then you'd have another quarterback battle in 2026. Now, is Novosad willing to wait that long? Maybe, maybe not. Tyler Shuck was. Tyler Shuck waited for, it was at least 2, might have been 3. I'd have to double check, but he waited for multiple seasons before he got an opportunity to start. I think Novosad could kind of be that sort of guy. So I definitely hope that that he sticks around for those reasons. Does that guarantee that he will? No, because he's a guy that might look at the landscape of quarterbacks for Oregon now and in the future and think, this is not the place anymore where I have the best chance to start. They brought in a transfer, and coaches tend to lean towards transfers and whatnot, so he might think that his starting prospects are best served elsewhere. So I could see it, but I hope he sticks around. So, and we just haven't really seen that much of it. Like, we don't really know what he is, right? It's kind of the Ty Thompson factor. Not entirely. He doesn't have the arm that Ty Thompson does, but certainly there is that element of, well, we don't really know what we've got here, and I want to know. I want to see. And maybe we'll get the chance to. Maybe we will not. But couple other names to watch in the transfer portal. I think this is an either or. I'd be surprised if it was both, but 2 names to keep an eye on here for Oregon fans, Nico Reed and Dante Manning. So why would I look at those 2 guys? Let's start with Nico Reed, a guy who was, by all accounts, not necessarily a starter last year. He was when Oregon had some injuries in the secondary, like when Jackson got hurt in the Pac-12 title game here and there, and Jaleel Florence was already injured, so he wasn't playing in that game. Nico Reed is someone who was regularly on the field in, a base 5 defensive back set for Oregon's defense. So I think that Nico Reed could transfer for 2 reasons. Number one, the corner back room, not safety room, but corner back room is really crowded. It's really crowded. There are just a lot of starting caliber guys in there. And you look at Nico Reed, and this applies to Dante Manning as well, and he came over from Colorado with Demetrius Martin. Demetrius Martin, you may recall, now the defensive backs coach at Michigan State. Would he follow him back there? I don't know. Maybe he really likes Oregon. But he came over with Martin once before. I would not be surprised if he goes and follows him again, and if he wouldn't have a better opportunity to start over there, because they're rebuilding, right? Michigan State is going into year 1 of a rebuild, and Oregon is trying to contend for a national championship this year. And they've brought in a bunch of transfers in the secondary. And heck, maybe they bring in more this offseason. You've got young freshmen who are coming up that were highly touted recruits, guys like Roderick Pleasant or Dalen Austin. So I think Nico Reed could be one guy. I think Dante Manning could be another. I'll tell you why. First, let me tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, which is like a super awesome price. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. That's why 2.5 million small businesses, they use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, little second segment sip here on a Monday show. Appreciate you all being tuned in here. So, Dante Manning has been with the Ducks since 2020. Kind of crazy to think about. He's going into his 5th year of college football, all with the Ducks. And he's a guy who was a highly touted recruit, 5-star guy, has had all the physical traits in the world, has not been able to put it together, has not been able, from what I've seen, to develop the ball skills. Like he doesn't get beat because he's too twitchy, he's too fast and explosive with his athleticism, but has never been able to hone the ball skills to be an elite shutdown corner the way he's capable of being. So that's a guy who Dan Lanning did not recruit. He inherited, certainly played a good amount last year, but that's one factor why I'd look at him and say, I wouldn't be surprised if he were to enter the transfer portal. Number 2, going back to the secondary thing, and the same principle applies to Nico Reed, you've got a lot of newcomers in that room. Jabbar Muhammad, that's CB1. That's your number 1 corner. I don't think anyone has any doubts about that. You have Jalil Florence, who was a Dan Lanning staff recruit. Now, Demetrius Martin isn't the DB coach anymore, but that's a guy who Lanning knows, and Tosh Lupoy knows on the defensive side of the football. And he's, I believe, expected not to necessarily play during spring football. I saw something where he might, but again, we know what Jalil Florence is. He's a starting caliber corner. But then they also brought in Cam Alexander from UTSA and Brandon Johnson from Duke. And you have young upcoming freshmen who are going to try and push for playing time. So I could see Dante Manning as a guy that wasn't recruited by this staff, who's been around for a long time and just kind of is what he is. If he's your number 2 corner, you probably have an average secondary. If he's your number 4 corner, maybe you have an above average secondary. Oregon's secondary, for the most part, was very good last year. And Dante Manning was not one of the top 2 corners in that particular lineup. He was certainly in the rotation considerably, but would I say that he's, a starting guy in the secondary if everybody's healthy? Probably not. Because last year he wasn't, and I think the newcomers are going to have an opportunity to play because typically guys get brought in for a reason, and that's that they see a really clear path to playing time and have that understanding with coaches. So I could see Manning, who could certainly find a home elsewhere very easily. Any guy that has played 4 years in Oregon secondary across a couple of different defensive staffs that was as highly rated a recruit as he was, I can absolutely see him fielding offers in the transfer portal. But I think the positional component is, what you have to really factor in here when thinking about, okay, which guys could transfer out. I look at the cornerback room and think it is the most loaded with starting caliber guys who might not see the field this year, might not see it in a major way, right? Think Triquez Bridges a year ago. Second half of 2022, Triquez Bridges was really good. And last year, he was about the number 3 or 4 corner for the Ducks. And then after this past season, he transferred out. And so I wonder if Manning isn't one of those guys who also, like Triquez Bridges, a holdover from the previous coaching staff, if he doesn't look at that situation and say, I don't want to get relegated to a less than starting role, and I want to find somewhere where I can play. If he wants to try and make the NFL, you got to be able to put as many snaps on film as you can, and that opportunity might not be afforded to him in Oregon in the way that he wants to. So, last one here on the transfer targets before we talk 2023 pop candidates. Offensive line, already saw Michael Wooten transfer out, who was a redshirt freshman coming into 2024, so he's a 2022 recruit. That's just a position where I feel like transfer candidates are pretty common because you just have so many guys. You have so many guys at that position, and all of them are big and all of them are strong, and it can come down to technique or playing time or whether or not a coach likes you or can you find your way into the jumbo package. But yeah, I could see another offensive lineman hitting the transfer portal. We'll see if any surprise names are in there for the Ducks. Again, there's all this talk and speculation about it's going to be so busy, it's going to be so crazy. We'll find out. I don't think Oregon is going to get plundered. I think they have a better chance of doing some plundering elsewhere than having their roster get gutted and you reassess going, wait a minute, what are we going to do at this position? Or what's the plan over here? Because now these guys are all gone. So let's talk 2023. Not the 2024 recruiting class. It's hard for true freshmen to play. I think there will be a couple, notably Aiden Breland at defensive tackle, the 5-star from Mater Dei High School. But was thinking about this the other day, thought I'd share, because that's, kind of how the show works, more or less, somewhat. You can always get in the mailbag, though. YouTube comments or X, formerly known as Twitter. If you want priority access, go join the flock over at Subtext. Link is in the description below, wherever you listen to or watch this show. I've got 3 names from the 2023 class who have a good chance to play. Now, when I say play, I don't automatically mean start, but I mean an increased role from what they had a season ago. Let's start with Jurion Dickey. I think that Jurion Dickey is going to push for playing time. I think Gary Bryant's wide receiver spot is the most up for grabs. But Dickey's size, versatility, and just overall playmaking potential could allow him to kind of work in anywhere. Not sure if, he's necessarily a slot possession receiver. He's 6'1", so I don't know if he's a slot possession receiver the way that Tez Johnson is. But if you were to have an injury anywhere in the Oregon receiving corps to the headline guys, I think Dickey'd be a prime candidate to step up and suddenly play a contributing role and be one of those top 4 receivers. So last year you had 4 wide receivers that really made an impact for the Ducks offensively. Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson, of course, 1,000-yard seasons. And then you had Trayshawn Holden and Gary Bryant Jr. And it was a very good receiving corps. And with Evan Stewart in for Troy Franklin, everybody else back, it's going to be a very good receiving corps once again. But if you have an injury to any of those spots, like let's say Tez Johnson were to get hurt, and Gary Bryant would be the number 1 guy I'd look at as, he's probably going to the slot. He probably he's played a lot of football inside and out, but then who takes Gary Bryant's slot? That'd be Jurion Dickey. I think that he's someone who will see more regularly in the offense. Very highly touted recruit. One of the, I think, 10 highest rated recruits in Oregon football history. One of the highest rated receiver recruits ever. He is someone who is the total package, and his potential is just so immense. And I think that he is going to be able to find a way to make more plays than he did last year, because he really didn't, do anything a season ago. I think he only had 1 catch. He might not have caught any passes, actually. Let me double check that real quick. I don't think he caught a single ball last year. One catch for 7 yards. I think he'll go over that. Assuming he's healthy, I think he'll go over that. So that's one name certainly to look out for from that 2023 recruiting class who have kind of, redshirted or been waiting in the wings or waiting for their opportunity. Another guy is Amari Washington. And the defensive tackle position is a big one for the Ducks because of how many they lost from a year ago. Like literally, top 4 guys, they're gone. Dorless, Rogers, Amavai, and Taki Taimani, all gone. You bring in Jamari Caldwell from Houston, that's 1. But you got 3 other spots in there. Is it going to be Keon Ware-Hudson? Maybe. Is it going to be Ben Roberts? Could be. But even if both of those guys, who are the most experienced of the bunch, are going to play, that's still not replacing 4. So someone has to play those starting caliber snaps, or at least regular rotation guys along the defensive line. I think Lanning and Lupoy do a good job of keeping guys fresh and using a lot of players up there, and that's why they recruit those positions so heavily in the high school ranks. If you look at snap counts from 2023, Amari Washington is the guy amongst those blue chip defensive line recruits that redshirted who played the most. So I look at him because of that. Like that would make you think he's the highest on the depth chart, at least at the end of last season. But could a guy like Johnny Bowens, Mikhail Gardner, Ashton Porter, any of those guys could pop. But I think Washington is someone who, didn't really play a role until garbage time last year. One of those guys, and Washington would be the primary candidate, could see a much more significant role because of the positional need that Oregon has right there. And, barring a transfer coming available that, could be a plug-and-play starter for the Ducks, and if that guy comes available, I have a hard time Oregon not going that route, because would you go with someone who's talented but young and unproven, or would you go with someone who's veteran and you know what you're going to get from him? I mean, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, but if you could know what is in there and whether or not you actually like the candy that's in store, you'd probably go in that particular direction. So, Forrest Gump. Oh, gosh. Is there anybody that doesn't like Forrest Gump? I don't think so. Probably not. But there is still one more pop candidate I've got, and I really, really like this guy. Have I told you about FanDuel yet? Everydayers are definitely aware. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Yeah, that's right. That's $150 whether you win or lose. Or you just bet on Scotty Scheffler to win, I don't know, every other time he plays, because that's how this works now. That guy's really good. Really, really good. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Seriously, ask yourself the question. What are you waiting for? You can make anything more interesting right here, right now at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. My third pop candidate from the 2023 class who will see an increased role is Kenyon Sadiq. And my sneaky hot take, I don't know how hot of a take it is, but I think Sadiq is going to be the number 2 tight end by the end of the year over Patrick Herbert, who's a very solid number 2 tight end. He does not have the same ceiling as Kenyon Sadiq. There are not that many tight ends that you hand the ball off to on a fly sweep, but Sadiq is that sort of guy. And, we saw him make a contribution here or there. They threw him a pop pass for a touchdown in the Fiesta Bowl. I think that move was to try to prevent him from transferring, to show him like, hey, we're aware you're here, we want to get you the ball more and everything like that, because they know how talented he is. And he's bulked up in the offseason, added about 20 pounds or so from where he was a year ago. So I think that Sadiq in that tight end room is going to have a much bigger role than he did last season. And look, he was essentially the number 4 tight end. He's certainly the number 3, because last year you had T. Ferg, who's number 1. He's a stud. Patrick Herbert was number 2. But last year, Casey Kelly was the number 3, and Sadiq was the number 4. And it kind of depended on, the package and what Will Stein wanted to run offensively. But I think Sadiq is just such a unique physical specimen at the tight end position. He's almost like a wide receiver. Like if you look at the size and weight of Trayshawn Holden and Kenyon Sadiq, they're not that different. Like Trayshawn Holden almost reminds me a little bit of Juwan Johnson. Like he's a really big-bodied receiver, and he could go to the NFL, maybe play tight end, and just have that sort of high-end speed. Juwan Johnson, remember when he came to the Ducks from Penn State, he was a receiver. He's still playing tight end for the Saints. He's doing very well, by the way. I think that Johnson is phenomenal out there, and if Taysom Hill were to ever, not play in a particular game, Juwan Johnson, sneaky nice fantasy pick up there. I think he and Derek Carr had some nice chemistry last year. But anyway, I think Sadiq is another 2023 guy that is lined up for a bigger role than what he had a season ago. And it's a much more, kind of old school at this point, like traditional progression of you come in as a true freshman, pretty highly touted recruit, you play a little, and then the next year you play a little more, and then the next year you play a little more. And you don't see that as often because of the availability of the portal. We'll see who Oregon, is able to grab, or if they even end up grabbing anybody out of the transfer portal and where those needs could be. I'm going to talk about that more on tomorrow's show. But those are my 2023 pop candidates: Amari Washington, Jurion Dickey, and Kenyon Sadiq. I think those are 2023 recruits that are going to, at the very least, see a bigger role than what they had in the 2023 season. And they're all, I'm pretty sure, red shirts at this point. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Let me know what you are all thinking about. So let's do a little potpourri. Let's begin. Potpourri, of course, means a little bit of everything. I got that term from Jeopardy. I'm a big fan. Let's do this before we talk about Oregon's lone 2024 high school basketball commit, who is making me think about what Oregon's transfer portal needs are. Update on baseball. They won 2 out of 3 out of USC last week after dropping a game early in the week to Sacramento State. They bounced back, got the split. Oregon still has not lost a Pac-12 series. They've risen to 17th in the country right now, and I like where the team's at, big time. And it is not just the Bryce Betcher show. He robbed a home run against USC, but that's beside the point. That guy is just athlete. Bryce Betcher out there. This has been kind of the season-long storyline for the Ducks at this point, at least the way I see it. And, Jared Mack came on the show a while ago and talked about this. Their pitching feels a lot better than a year ago. There are not as many games where you're winning 13-10, or you got to put up 9 just to win. They're winning a lot more slugfests. I guess that has a more offensive connotation when you're talking about baseball. But, RJ Gordon and Grayson Grinsell and guys in the bullpen, they've been doing a really, really nice job. And for Oregon to be at this point in the year and still have not lost a Pac-12 series, they'll lose one eventually. But if you just keep stacking up Pac-12 series wins, you're going to put yourself in good position for the conference tournament, to make a regional, and to just stay inside the top 25. And that's where Oregon is at right now. And I think they're in a really, really good spot. This question came in from Zaheem. I'm happy to oblige. Again, mailbag questions, always welcome. Mailbag is light right now. You could get in it. Just saying. Well, you can always get in it. Can we get a question out to the viewers of this show? For those who have been around Eugene for a solid period of time, where are the best underrated places that out-of-towners really don't know to eat in Eugene? I went to Eugene for the first time last year for the Colorado game. Good game to go to. And I was referred to Killer Burger about 100 times. Apparently, that's the only place to eat in Eugene. Help a guy out. YouTube comments, do your thing. That's where that question came from. Find my guy Zaheem, who may or may not be an everydayer. He's a regular consumer of the show at the very least. I appreciate you and everybody out there who consumes this show. Let's close on Ibrahima Traore. So that is Oregon's lone 2024 high school basketball commit. Kind of crazy that Oregon had such a highly rated recruiting class in the 2023 cycle, and they're in the 114 range because it's just Traore. Now, Des Lindsey has committed to the Ducks as well, the JUCO prospect. But Traore is interesting. So 6'8", 220-pound, listed as a center, more like a power forward, from West Oaks Academy in Orlando. They take basketball pretty seriously down there. I'll say I have a friend who lives in Orlando, and he says that basketball is, interestingly enough, the third biggest sport. It is football number 1, and it is actually baseball number 2. And basketball is, hit and miss compared to some other recruiting hotspots across the country. But he chose Oregon over kind of an interesting list of teams. College of Charleston, who I had to the Sweet 16 in my bracket this year. Bama went to the Final Four instead. They were my upset pick. They've made the tournament the last 2 years. Just saying. Texas State, and then FAU and Miami. Those are the teams that were going after Traore. So not an insane lineup, though. FAU, very good mid-major program. Texas State, just okay. College of Charleston, more of a low-major program. And then Miami. Miami has had some basketball success in recent years. Does not have a huge recruiting profile. He's a 3-star recruit. He's someone that, to find highlights on, you gotta dig in the right, but go through his Twitter page and find the right highlight. There was a TikTok highlight of him, making a dunk at one end and a block at the other. In February, he played in an academy game, where West Oaks Academy played somebody else from North Carolina, and he had 27 points and 13 rebounds. It's not bad, not bad at all. But here's the real reason I wanted to bring him up on today's show, because I've mentioned him before and kind of talked about, I don't really understand what their expectations are for him, because I haven't talked to a coach about what they think they'll get from him. But when you watch his highlight plays, he's undersized at 6'8" to play in the front court the way he does, but he's a pretty athletic dude. High motor, clearly got some skills finishing at the rim, solid little mid-range jumper, not bad at all. When I think about Oregon's lineup of bigs next year, I've said for a while, well, they probably need 2 bigs. If they feel like Traore can contribute right away, they might only need 1 big. Now, that 1 big would be a starting big, most likely, because can you rely on Nate Biddle to play an entire season and be healthy? That'd be asking a lot. That'd be asking a lot because he hasn't been able to stay healthy so far. So I would like to see Oregon add a starting caliber big, but if they think Traore is their backup power forward, then the only other needs they'd have in addition to a starting big would be Tony Perkins from Iowa, of course, a starting shooting guard. So I think that for Traore, he reminds me a lot of, those of you Blazer fans out there will get this reference, J.J. Hickson. Just kind of plays as an undersized, energy-driven big. I think he's a little bit more athletic, frankly. Not quite as built out as Hickson was. I think Hickson was like 240, 250. He was a really big guy. But kind of playing that undersized 5 or a big 4 and just someone who's going to do a lot of damage in the paint. That's what Oregon's getting there. And, you know, they've kept him committed, of course. Victorious Miller was the shooting guard who decommitted, which, again, makes me think they got to have a plan. They got to have, there surely is a plan. I expect between football and basketball for there to be transfer portal action this week. I would love for it to be both in the best way possible, but particularly for basketball, I think the needs there are a lot greater. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.